Hey guys, it's Mr. Co. I am here to go over the Lesson 9 concept development with you guys. So for Lesson 9, you are going to need a piece of paper to take some notes and copy down some example problems. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Our I can statement says that I can solve problems involving mixed units of time. So this is going to be just like lessons 8, 7, and 6, except this time our units are going to be time. So you're going to see a lot of the same strategies. We're just going to be talking about different conversions. So to jog our memories as to what units we talked about in this lesson, we talked about days and how in one day there are 24 hours. We talked about how in 1 hour there are 60 minutes. And we talked about how in 1 minute there are 60 seconds. Okay, so for the first problems, we're going to be finding the sum. So that means we're going to be finding the answer to an addition sentence. So we've got 31 seconds plus 29 seconds. So I've got seconds on both sides of my addition sign, so I can go ahead and add to because my units are the same. I'm going to do that off to the side. Remember, we don't always have to do mental math. If anything, your teachers are going to want to see your work off to the side. That's what we want to see. We don't want us to just test our limits with memory. I want us to be showing our work. So 31 seconds plus 29 seconds is 60 seconds. Now, just like if you were with me for lesson 8 and lesson 7, we had talked about how when you add, when you're done adding, think, can you rename these smaller units into a larger unit? So I've got seconds. Those are my smaller units. What's the next biggest unit after seconds? That's going to be minutes. I know that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, so I can rename my 60 seconds into a larger unit, minutes. I can rename 60 seconds into 1 minute. Okay, so when we're adding, making sure that when you're done adding, ask yourself, can you rename the smaller units into a larger unit? Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So here we have 2 hours 45 minutes plus 50 minutes. So looking at my units, I see that I have minutes on both sides of the addition sign. I only have hours on the left. I do not have hours on the right, so I will not be adding any more hours on to my 2 here, but we might be able to rename some minutes into hours. So I'm going to add my 50 minutes plus my 45 minutes. I get 95 minutes. So 2 hours and 45 minutes plus 50 minutes gives me 2 hours and 95 minutes. But now I'm going to ask myself, can I rename those smaller units, which is minutes? Can I rename that into a larger unit? The next highest unit after minutes is going to be hours, and I know that the relationship between hours and minutes is that in 1 hour, there are 60 minutes. I definitely have enough. I have 95 minutes. I can make an hour out of that. So I'm going to pull out 60 minutes, which is equal to 1 hour, and what's left over after I pull out my 60 minutes? That's going to be 35 minutes. That's not enough to make another hour, so I'm going to make sure to add on the hour that I was able to create onto the hours I already have. So now I've got 3 hours and 35 minutes as my final answer because I had 95 minutes. I broke it apart into 60 and 35. I turned that 60 minutes into an hour, added on to what I already had, which is what gave me the 3 hours, and I had 35 minutes left over. So once again, I added my units that were the same, and then I asked myself, can I rename my answer as a larger unit, which I was able to do. I was able to turn minutes into hours. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next question. All right, so here, let's take a look at what units I'm working with. I have days, and I actually have days on both sides of the addition sign. So I've got days on the left and I've got days on the right, so maybe adding some days together. And I have hours on both sides of the addition sign as well. So I'm going to be adding my days plus my days, so my 9 days plus my 3 days. That's going to give me 12 days. And then I'm going to add my 12 hours plus my 20 hours, and that's going to give me 32 hours. So 3 days, 12 hours plus 9 days, 20 hours is 12 days, 32 hours. Now, I need to ask myself, I'm sure you guys are tired of me saying this because I said it a lot now. We need to think to ourselves, can I rename my smaller unit into a larger unit? So my smaller unit is hours. What's the next largest unit after hours? That's going to be days. What do I know about the relationship between days and hours? I know there are 24 hours in a day. Do I have enough hours here to make one more day? Yes, I do, because I only need 24. I've got 32. I have more than enough. So I'm going to pull out 24 hours here to make one day. And I am going to actually subtract off to the side because I have 32. I took away 24. And I'm left with 8 hours after pulling out those 24 hours to make another day. So I'm going to take that day that I was able to create from 24 hours, add it onto the days I already have, which gives me 13 days, and I have 8 hours left over, so I can rename 12 days, 32 hours into 13 days, 8 hours. Always making sure you're asking yourself, can you rename those smaller units into a larger unit? Okay, so I think we are ready to move on to the next question. Okay, so this is going to be our last addition problem before we move on to some subtraction problems. Let's take a look and see what units we are working with. On the left side of the addition symbol, I see hours and minutes. On the right side, I also see hours and minutes. So we're going to be adding hours and hours and then minutes plus minutes. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got 12 hours plus 3 hours, which is 15 hours, and then I've got 45 minutes plus 45 minutes, which gives me 90 minutes. So 12 hours, 45 minutes plus 3 hours, 45 minutes is 15 hours, 90 minutes. So I'm sure you are already thinking, can we rename our minutes into a larger unit? Because minutes is the smallest unit that we have. We're trying to rename a smaller unit into larger units. The next highest unit after minutes is hours. The relationship between hours and minutes is that in 1 hour there are 60 minutes. So I'm going to think, can I pull out 60 minutes from 90 minutes to make an hour? Yes, I definitely can. So I'm going to break apart 90 minutes into 60 minutes and 30 minutes. So it kind of looks like a 39. Let me just and 30 minutes. So my 60 minutes are going to turn into 1 hour. I'm going to add it onto the hours that I already have, which now gives me 16 hours. And then after pulling out the 60 minutes from 90 to make that hour, I'm left with 30 minutes. So my final answer is 16 hours, 30 minutes. So when you are adding, it doesn't matter what units you're working with, whether it's capacity, whether it's time, whether it's weight, you're going to want to ask yourself when you're adding, like the final answer that you get, can you rename this as a larger unit? Think about all the units that we've worked with regarding capacity, time, or whatever units that you're working with. Think about those units and think, can I rename these smaller units into a larger unit? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to some subtraction problems. All right, so here we're going to be finding the difference. Difference means the answer to a subtraction problem. So here we are subtracting 38 minutes from 7 hours, 15 minutes. So looking at my units, I've got minutes on both sides of the subtraction sign, and then I only have hours on the left. So if you've been watching the concept development videos with me this week, then you would know that when we subtract, I'm going to start with the smaller units because that's what we do with whole numbers. So I'm going to be subtracting minutes from minutes. I'm subtracting 38 from 15. Remember I said in previous videos that if the smaller number, because this is what we're subtracting from. So if this number, this first number that's listed, if it's smaller than the second number, then that means you cannot subtract and you're going to need to regroup. So that means that I can't take away 38 from 15. So I'm going to need some more minutes. I can get those minutes from these hours. So I'm going to break apart my 7 hours into 6 hours and then 60 minutes because I took an hour away and turned it into minutes. You guys know that if you've been watching with me, I like to add on whatever unit, because if it's a mixed unit, I want to add it on to whatever I created, so that way I'm keeping all my minutes together and I'm not going to forget about them. So I'm going to add on the 15 minutes that I already had, and that's going to give me 75 minutes. So now I have, instead of 7 hours, 15 minutes, I now have 6 hours and 75 minutes. I can now subtract my 38 minutes from 75, so I'm going to do that off to the side. And I get 37 minutes. So my final answer is 6 hours, because I'm not taking anything away from the 6 hours because there's no hours on this side of the subtraction sign. And I took away 38 from 75, and that gave me 37. So 7 hours, 15 minutes minus 38 minutes is 6 hours, 37 minutes. So when you're subtracting, just make sure that you are subtracting like units and like units. The units need to be the same, so that's why I did minutes minus minutes. I didn't do 38 minus 7, because those would not, that wouldn't make sense. My units are not the same there. So I subtracted my minutes, and then I asked myself, can I subtract? So I looked at my 15 and my 38 because I knew those were my units that were the same, but then I asked myself, can I even take away 38 from 15? The answer was no, and so then I had to decompose my 7 hours into 6 hours, 60 minutes. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply this to another question. All right, so here we've got 11 days, 10 hours minus 16 hours. Let's see, what units are we working with? We're working with days and hours on the left side of the subtraction sign, and I'm working with hours on the right side of the subtraction sign. So I know I'm going to be taking away my hours from my hours. So I found my units that are the same. Now I'm ready to ask myself, can I subtract? I'm trying to take away 16 from 10. Can I do that? No, because that's like saying if someone has 10 pencils and you're trying to take 16 pencils from them, they don't have enough pencils to give you. So I do not have enough hours to subtract, but I can get some hours from these days here. So I'm going to break apart my 11 days into 10 days. And then how many hours are in a day? That's going to be 24 hours. So I'm giving myself more hours to work with. And I'm going to add on the 10 that I already have, just so I can keep all of my hours together and I don't forget about them later. So now, instead of 24 hours, I've got 34 hours. So when I turned 11 days, 10 hours into 10 days and 34 hours. Can I subtract my 16 hours now? Yes, I can. So I'm going to do that off to the side. And I get 18 hours. So my final answer is going to be 10 days, because I'm not subtracting anything from these 10 days because there's no days to subtract over here. We're only taking away hours. I took away 16 from 34, which gave me my 18. So my final answer is 10 days, 18 hours. So I found my units that were the same. Those were my hours. And then I asked myself, can I subtract? The answer was no, so I had to decompose to get more hours from the days that I had. All right, let's keep this moving along. All right, so this is actually going to be our last question before I leave you to work on your problem set on your own. Okay, so let's take a look. What units are we working with? On the left side of the subtraction sign, I've got minutes and seconds. On the right side, I have minutes as well, and I have seconds as well. So I actually have minutes and seconds on both sides of the subtraction sign. So I'm going to need to keep in mind that I'm taking away seconds and I'm taking away minutes from this guy here. So We're starting with the smallest unit because when we're dealing with mixed units like this, we start with the smallest unit because that's what we do with whole numbers. I'm trying to take away 46 seconds from 8 because remember this number here is what we're taking away from. It always is. That first number, we're taking away from that. I can't take away 46 from 8. So I'm going to need some more seconds in order to subtract. Where can I get those seconds? I can get them from my minutes here. So I'm going to decompose my 25 minutes into 24 minutes, and then I'm going to turn one of those minutes into seconds. There are 60 seconds in a minute, so instead of 25 minutes, it's now 24 minutes, 60 seconds. I'm going to add on my 8 seconds that I already had because I want to keep all of my seconds together. I don't want to forget about it, so I'm going to add the 8 plus the 60, so now I actually have 68 seconds. So now I'm ready to subtract. I'm going to take away the 46 from my 68. And that gives me 22 seconds. So I subtracted my seconds from my seconds, and I'm not forget about the minutes because the previous examples, we only had to subtract like the smaller units, and then this guy could just come on over. But in this case, I've got minutes on both sides of the subtraction sign, so I'm going to need to subtract that 12 from the 24. And I get 12. So just making sure that when we're subtracting, we're asking ourselves, what units do we have that are the same? And then we're going to ask ourselves, can we subtract right away? Or are we going to need to decompose like we've been doing here? So, and then I just made sure that with this one, since like I would recommend that you guys like look at the question first and don't immediately start solving. Just take a second to be like, what units am I even working with here? I'm working with minutes, I'm working with seconds, because and then is that on both sides of the equation? Because if you take a second to see what units are you working with, then it can kind of help you hone in on what conversions to focus on. Because if I take a little bit of time to see I'm working with minutes and seconds, I can then think to myself, all right, now that I know that I'm working with minutes and seconds, what is the relationship between those two units? And I can tell myself, well, I know that 60 seconds are in a minute, so that's going to kind of help me really get in the right mindset for what I'm going to do to solve this problem. Because if we were working with days and hours, then I would need to ask myself, okay, well, then what do I know about the relationship between days and hours? I know that there's 24 hours in a day. And so then, like, you're able to hone in on the correct conversions that you're going to be using in solving the problem. All right, so that is going to be it for this video. Remember, you can always rewind and watch it again. You can use it to help you with the problem set questions. I definitely recommend that you copy down the work for some of these questions just so you have a correct example, and you can kind of use that to help inform you on what steps to take with your problem set. So thanks so much, guys, for tuning in to our YouTube videos. It's really important that you guys are using your resources here. So I hope you guys are doing well, and until next time, bye, guys.